Hi there guys, this is Farmer Bob. Welcome back to my channel. Awesome man guys, great to be back with another video on map making. And today we're going to just have a brief and quick talk about the editor itself. Just giving some basic information on the editor and also just here and there maybe a hint or a tip. So yes, sit back and relax with me, grab your favorite drink. We're going to just have a look at the beginner's guide or something in that area on the editor itself and what I've learned over the past few years. I'm going to try and share and just make it simple. And the editor is not a difficult thing. It's just if you don't know about all the tools, what is available, it can be overwhelming if you're new to the editor, you know. But with time and practice, like in anything in life, if you just stick to it and carry on and try and figure out and try it this way and try it that way, yes, you will definitely make sense of it all. But yes, if this is your first time on the channel, a warm welcome. Please hit the subscribe as we are busy talking about that. Before we forget, it does help the channel grow, guys. And yeah, thanks so much for watching and joining, guys. Good, man. So yes, the first thing we want to tackle and talk about is the scene graph. Now, the window, or let's say the whole editor window, is made up out of a lot of different little windows that you can open and close, like that. And this one here we can close. So at the end of the day, if you close all the windows, you've got a whole nice view of your area or your workspace or whatever you're busy, whether you're modding or whether you're building maps or whatever. So in order to select your windows that you want open, you just go on the window menu on top. And obviously this is your top menu where you can do your file import, export and edit things, create planes and lights and cameras, anything that or primitives, whatever you want to create is there. The view selection in here is you select what type of stuff you want to see here in your map. So for instance, under view, under the show button, you can have the camera shown, the navigation meshes. That should always be off, by the way, because otherwise you're going to see your husbandry's navigation meshes. So view, show, that just gives you all the options of what you can view in your actual work area. Then scripts is advanced stuff that you want to use, for instance, to go onto map, create a collision map, get field sizes, the physics property test, and the render field areas that we all know what you need to do your fields with, you know. So yeah, that's your scripts running. And then the window, as we have already talked, is where you select all your things, and then the help, you can figure out the help yourself. It's help. Good, man. All right, so let's just open up our scene graph again. We'd start there. The scene graph is basically the structure of your i3D. So if you look in anything that you work in the editor works via an i3D. So I'm currently working off a map called test map, FS22 test map. All right, so that's the i3D I currently have open. On top here, it will show you what i3D you're working on. So you can always browse there if you forgot what you are working on. So I'm just going to go there to my maps backups, FS22, and then test map, and then maps, map Alpine. And these are the i3D I'm currently working on. Now the scene graph on this side is basically a structure or a visual of your i3D. So if you open your i3D in Notepad++, you will find that the whole i3D is actually an XML file, or structured in an XML file that you can modify and manipulate in the XML, but it's also visualized in the editor here in the scene graph. So that's just a basic explanation of what the scene graph is. So if you go now to for instance, any directory in your scene graph, you will find that you can expand it and close it, like so. And there's subdirectories under any directory if you choose to have subdirectories. You know, it just depends on how you build your map structure. Now this map is the Alpine map of Giant's editor, and obviously they've added subdirectories and everything. So yeah, you can build on that, or you can decide your own way of structuring it. It doesn't matter. So if you work on a vehicle mod, for instance, or on a farmhouse mod or whatever, you can decide how you want and what you want where. Now, to move things about in this, if you take, for instance, the cheese collectibles, it is now in gameplay, and it's under the gameplay transform group is the cheese collectibles. I just want to open my attributes window so you can also see the attributes of that selected transform group. So here you've got your translation, which is your positioning on the map, X, Y, and Z, and the rotation, X, Y, and Z, and the scale is the size of whatever you work with. By average, scale will always be 1, unless you want to think bigger or smaller. So if I select a building there, for instance, it will select the building, but be careful, it doesn't always select the building, it mostly selects your visual components of the building. So just go to the actual main transform of that, and if I want to make that thing now bigger, I can make it bigger, like so. If I go the X, Y, and Z, make it 2, it will be twice the size, for instance, just to give you an idea, you know. Yes, so if I now want to take this building, for instance, and move it out of this menu structure where it's currently situated, I can select it and cut it, Control X. And given that this transform has a 0 on all its positioning and rotation and everything, it means that I can put it in any other one with a 0. If the thing you're moving or trying to move has got any translation on its position, I will not suggest to move it, because otherwise you're going to have to reposition it. Otherwise, it will not be in the same place when you move it. Okay, so so for instance, I want to move that out of there into the gameplay one. So I just select the gameplay where I want it, and then go Control V. That's all. So I drop it in there, and there it is. Because this gameplay has also got a 0 on its positioning and everything, it will be exactly at the same spot. But if the place where I parked it or pasted it in does not have a 0, you're going to have a problem. It's going to pop up somewhere else, because it will use this one's positioning, or the parent, I would say, it will use that positioning as its own, and then it will appear on another place, and then you'll have to go Control B to move it around into the new place where you want it, or into the old place where it was. So just keep that in mind, guys, when you move stuff around in your transform or in your scene graph. So yes, I will not save this map, because obviously I'm going to fiddle around a bit. So that is the scene graph and how it's structured and what it does. It's basically an image of your i3D visually. Okay, the coding of the i3D, or the text, or the setup of the i3D visually explained or showed here in the editor. All right. Now the next thing obviously is your the terrain editing tool, which you'll probably use most of the time. And the terrain editing window uses this 5 little icons here on top mostly. The first one being the sculpt mode, where you can obviously, if you select that, you can work on the terrain, making it higher, making it lower with your brush and your button actions here. If you want to make a terrain higher, the add button is on the left mouse. You can change it to any button you prefer. And if I now add here, you'll see I'm adding to the terrain. So that's the terrain editing. And then obviously there's a lot of other things that you can fool around with. The opacity, hardness, and value is the amount of how sensitive the tool will be. So if you'll see now, it's much more sensitive because I've put this on max. If I do it a little, you're going to have to do a lot of work or moving about to make changes. So there's like a little, so it is making it just more sensitive for you to use with, you know. And then the replace limit is a very nice one to to use. I use that a lot, especially if you want to have a flat surface for building things on. So the replace works like this, guys. You select one of your mouse buttons, anyone, doesn't matter. You add the replace in there, and then just with your Control and R on the area or the place where you want the height to be. So if I press Control R here, look at the replace value here. So I press Control R here, it says that the height is 10.279. If I put it there, Control R, it's 40.906 up there. So now I've selected a replace height of 40 of there. But let's say I want to make this whole area flat here, where this big knob is that I've built. I go Control R, and remember, this makes all the terrain in that area that you're going to work with exactly 10.28. So it will take away all slopes, all unevenness. So then I use my right mouse button because I've set up replace on the right mouse button. Obviously, I must now select how hard I want this tool to work, or how strong it must be. And then I just right drag, and it will make the whole area one height. Everywhere where I go now with my cursor, it will be one height. And if I want it to be higher, like for instance, let's make it 15, to just give you an idea, it's going to create a huge, oh, that is way too much. It's 150. I don't know how I did that. Just 15 is enough. So yeah, this way you can create plateaus, surfaces that's level, all that kind of stuff, you know, to place buildings on, or level an area for a building. It's normally what I use to level areas for a building. Okay, so enough on the replace tool. There's a lot of other things that you can fool around with. The next tool is the texture layer painting. Texture layer painting is this one here. It's the paint mode, and it creates all your ground coverages. So whatever covers the surface of the ground, it's in here. I'll select something here. Let's go concrete, just for fun. And you can, with your left mouse button now, obviously paint concrete. Let me just see. It's concrete radius, and I've got that. I've definitely don't have it selected to limit to texture. Let's go to alpine grass, because that's probably what's going here. You know what, this is obviously earmarked as a field. So if I want to paint over this field area, you can see it's ignoring the field because it's actually a field. So if I now go to my field, this tool here, the terrain foliage paint mode tool, I first need to get rid of the field. So select here on top the terrain detail. That will give me a ground type of anything I can select. I'm just going to use stubble, and then remember to change your right mouse button back to subtract to remove. And if I remove this grass or this field here that is there, then you will see the actual texture that I've pasted down is that one there, you know. Right, so that is our thingamabobby working there. Just want to come closer. That's much better. And now obviously if I go now to my foliage terrain, I can go to any of the meadows or the the deco foliages. I can just select anything there, and I can remove even that ground coverage, because that's our foliage. Now the foliage tool I've skipped now. The foliage tool is obviously the one that we paint all the foliages with, your bushes and your flowers and your crops and everything. You paint it with that one. So whatever is in there. I just want to see why this oh, you know what, I haven't painted with this one obviously properly. That's why. It can be confusing, guys. So just it's a good thing it happens with me, so I can explain what's happening. The terrain paint tool, this one here, the detail texture paint mode, if you have that and there's a field, it won't paint over a field, because remember, the field is a type of it's a type of ground that is recognized by the computer as a place where crops needs to go on. So if you use this tool, you first need to get rid of the crops side of things before you can actually see what ground layer is or ground texture is under it. So there it is, basically what's happened there. Okay, so the texture paint tool, this one here, is just the one that gives you all your ground textures, and then the foliage paint tool is all our foliages that we can paint on top of the textures. So that gives you all your grasses and whatever on top. And then the next one, let's go from left to right, is the terrain mesh paint mode. That one, I've actually made a whole video on that. It's used to paint things multiple times at once. So if you select a tree, for instance, I'll make the radius a bit bigger, and I just want to close this up. So if I go to mesh painting and I set this to amount of trees maximum to 30, and the distance minimum, let's make this 5, so it will be very dense. Leave all of the rest, and now if I now take the mesh paint tool and I click once, it will paint a lot of trees at once in that area that I've got here. And you can make it play around with the amounts. I'm just going to undo that. So if I make the maximum distance between trees, say 10, it will be more dense. If I go there to the tool, you'll see there's a lot more trees. So that's basically your mesh paint tool in a nutshell. And then our next tool on the top here, why my machine is so slow this morning, is the terrain info layer paint mode. Now the info layer is all your information layers on your map. So if you open your map where all your weight files is, you'll see the density fruit map. Sorry, the info layers is here. The farmlands is one. Your indoor mask, that is for your snow. The navigation collision and the tip collision is for places where you don't want to allow people to tip stuff on the ground. In other words, on the layer of the actual map. So there's the surface here. So that is what your info layers do. You paint areas on the map to manipulate what can and can't be done on them, you know. So for instance, it gives permission for snow to land, for instance. If I just zoom out properly, we'll talk about the farmlands just now. If I go to the indoor mask, select 0 and go into the info layer tool, you'll see that all the areas that is now white is places where snow cannot fall. In other words, when it's snowing, it's not allowed to be on these areas. So now I can select a garage or a porch or something, and I can create a area underneath it where it can't snow, you know. So that is basically places like roads or anything where you don't want it to snow. That's what the mask does, and that's your info layer paint tool. So you work with that, and then obviously the default for that is your farmlands, and everyone should know what the farmlands do. It is basically there is a bit of confusion between the farmland and the fields, guys. Farmland is a area on the map that is owned by an in-game computer player. In other words, your NPC. So if you go into your field or your what do you call those things? Is it now projects? No, it's not projects. I'm struggling to find the right description for it. But anyway, the computer players own these pieces of land. And then also your default farm will also obviously be one of them. So if you go Control R on one of these lands, for instance, it will show you farmland 35. That's farmland. Control R on that one. That's farmland 36. So and all that happens now is when I lay out my farmland, I just paint the area I want that farmland to take hold of. Now there can be like 10 fields on this piece of farmland. And this computer player NPC is owning all 10 fields that's on that farmland, obviously. So if you go into your farmlands.xml, for instance, this map is a test map. It doesn't have the farmlands in it. So I still need to set that up if I want to use my own farmlands. Obviously you would. So you go into data, maps, any one of the three maps, just open the directory. I'm going to use the Alpine one because that's the one I'm busy working on. Copy that farmland XML, Control C, drop it into my map folder. Sorry, I just have the one open. Now I just need to go back like that. Here we go. And go into the place where my R3D is. Drop it here. Oh, there is one here. Why did I not see it? There it is on top, man. Skip this file. Sorry, I didn't see that. I already have one in there. My word, there it is. So here we go. That's your farmland IDs, and then obviously the price scale determines how valuable the property is. 1 being 100%, and then 0.3 being 30%. Of the price of the market that's set up here per hectare, you see. And then obviously this is the owner. NPC Alpine 07 is the owner there. He owns quite a bit of fields. Then there's 1, 2, 3. There's like a lot of NPCs that you can set up, and I'm not too sure how many there are. Maybe there are 20 NPCs. I'm not too sure. But you can work with what is here and just distribute the farmlands evenly. Who owns what piece of land? All right, enough of that. And remember, when you put your XML in your map, you also need to take this line here and put it in your own farmlands GRLE, because this points to the in-game map. You don't want it to point there if you're working with your own farmland that you've set up. You change that to your own map, and the farmlands GRLE that is in your map directory will be in here. It will be one of these farmlands GRLE. Just find it. There we go. Info layer farmlands GRLE. That's the one that you're painting here in the editor. So when you paint here, it actually paints this one in the XML, in this info layer here. All right, so it needs to point to this file. All right, and then also the last thing on farmlands is in your map XML. Obviously, you need to change the farmlands here, the line here, not to point to the in-game one, but to the one that we've just saw there, the XML, farmlands XML, that's in your map directory. Good. All right, back to the editor. Now, we've talked about the tools. Now you also see, let me just undo that. Never undo on your farmlands, which I've just done, guys. So I'm not going to save the map here, so it might make a difference. But when you've made a mistake on the farmlands, for instance, do not go Control Z. Just correct your error by selecting that farmland and then repainting the area where you've made the mistake. You know, like for instance, that was the mistake, so I'll just repaint the mistake with that farmlands area, because there is some. Used to be some error in the editor 8 where if you do Control Z's, it messes up your farmland and something goes wrong and you get this weird errors in game. So I'm just saying, I don't know if it's fixed, but just be cautious of that. Teach yourself that little bit of information, that you will not go that way and cause yourself some headaches, you know. All right, excellent. Enough on the farmlands. You will see that when you want to, I just want to unselect that. When you're zooming in and out with your zoom tool, I'm on nav speed 35 here at the bottom. So that's the speed that I navigate with in the map. When I press shift and move forward, or just forward and backwards, my speed is determined by the nav speed. Now that with your keypad plus and minus, you can make that smaller. I'm going to make it 1. So you can see that is now 1 speed moving in and out. That gives you like a nice adjustable way of determining how fast you can move about. And then also when you want to come in close to something, it's much easier when it's at a low level, because if you move fast like that, you can also use your mouse to roll in and out with your mouse wheel to zoom in and out. If you hold your right mouse button, you can zoom in and out with that. But if I make it now very slow, you'll see that even the mouse wheel's zooming is nice and slow, you know, so you can really zoom very close with that. What else can I share? All right, let's look at the other windows. we've done the scene graph. The attribute windows obviously is, if you select something in the scene graph, it gives you the attributes on that. Um, there's a lot to talk about here. I'm not going to spend too much in it, but rigid body, for instance, is stuff that you want to have collision on. A collision is, if I take this thing, for instance, it's a pillar or a post next to the road. That definitely needs collision, but in game, it's sometimes annoying when a thing like this have collision, because when you bump to it, it's solid. It stops your vehicle from moving. It's like a solid brick wall. That's collision. So if I want to set collision on it, I will select rigid body, go into the rigid body tab, and have collision up there. And then I can say the type. Static will be solid, unmovable, and dynamic will mean that it's movable in game. All right. So and be careful with that, guys, because if you do it in dynamic thing, the way it's been set up here, and also the person who made this little post determined the weight of it, and the size of it, and its characteristics. So if it's not properly set up, the moment you press play on that and you select dynamic, for instance, most of the things will start being doing funny things like hopping around. The moment you see something hop around, it's not been properly set up. There's some stuff with its resistances and its weight and its characteristics. So yeah, be careful with that tools. It's very powerful things to fool around with. Good. All right. Anyways, guys, yeah, the play button. It's a button that you can use to see things with movement. What say, for instance, a windmill that turns around, or a waterfall, or any of that thing. If you want to see movement, you can press the play button, and it actually starts the motions in the map for you. And then the little view button, it's nice. It's a little new button in Editor9, which gives you the ability to walk around as is in game, as if you were in the map. So it's a nice way of viewing your map in the game instead of being in the game, if you catch what I'm saying. Good. All right, and if you want to exit the view, just hit escape, and you'll be back in the editor mode, where you can zoom in and out and everything. All right, and then this little button here, next one, I want to just show you that one, because that one actually got me fooled for a while, and one of the YouTubers pointed out to me. Thanks for that, guys. If this button is selected, your arrows will not have the rings around it, and the expanders and everything. So just always tick that, and you'll have your movable tools like that. Make it bigger, make it smaller. But if that is selected, whoop, it's not there, So yeah, it's always handy to have those around. But if they're in the way for some reason, you can put them off there. All right, so that's the attributes window. Then on anything in the game, the next window will be your material editing. Let's have a quick browse on that. Material editing. I'm going to close this terrain editing, because we finished with that. Make this bigger. Now, material editing is a window that tells you about the thing that you've selected's materials. So the Aldibo map is the colors. The gloss map the gloss map is basically the one that gives you shining abilities. So that will be a file like your specular files. And then the normal map is the bumps. In other words, like water has got little bumps and holes in it. That's your normal map. It's the bump map, they call it. So that's basically the material editing. So for everything that you got in the game, you can select all of those to change the way it looks and the colors and whatever. So you can play around with those. Good. And then the next window will obviously be our user attributes. User attributes is a very handy thing. Give you an example of that. Just close. If you right click in the scene graph and select collapse all, it will put everything nicely back into place, so you can start fresh if you've been deep into a tree or something, If I go to water planes, for instance, open water planes, that's a nice example. You will have attributes on a certain thing that's in the map. Like, for instance, this is a water plane. So this plane has got scripts running and different things that's set up like this. This is a selector that says this is the main water plane. So all those scripts can be set up and worked, and that is what the user attributes is for. So you can set different attributes to a certain object in the editor. Good, guys. Yeah. What else can I quickly browse and view and work? And then obviously, you've got your the open R3D. That's a button just to open if you just have the editor open. The save R3D, I use that all the time. If I've done my work, I'll just quickly go save. It saves you from going there, file, save, and that type of stuff. You know, so it just helps a lot. All right. What else can I talk about? The console, my word, yeah, probably the most important thing in your editor is do view your console every time you open anything for errors. So here at the bottom, just see, or actually through the whole script, if there's any errors that will point you to any problems that you have in your map or whatever with the R3D, guys, with this R3D. So if you open your map R3D, it will tell you that there's any problems here. It does not mean that you won't have errors in the game, because your game actually works off XMLs, or your placeables XML, your store items XML, the farmlands XML. All those XMLs is loaded in the game, not here in the editor. So this only gives you errors on this selected R3D. So if you open a mod, for instance, or a truck or a car or whatever, if there's problems in the R3D, you will see it there. Great, guys. I hope this has been a little bit of information just for the basics on the editor, how to move about and what to do and how to use it. There's obviously a lot of other things that I don't want to spend too much time talking. I don't want to make the video too long, but yeah, just a basic introduction to the editor for those who are interested. All right. Have a wonderful day, guys, and bless you. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe and to share. Take care, man. Catch you on the next one. Cheers.